Good evening. Lib's not here. She's away. Right. I didn't expect you doing this tonight. So the winner of the Booker Prize just got announced, and the winner of the Booker Prize is Flesh by David Saloy, which is a book I have just over there somewhere. And it's a fine winner of the Booker Prize. But as you may or may not know, whenever it gets to Booker Prize season, basically read as many of the Booker Prize books as I can, which means that this year, by road to the fact that I've made some perhaps ill-advised choices, I've ended up reading, I think it's 11 or 12 of the Booker Prize long-listed books this year. And I finished the last one of those, which was The Land in Winter by Andrew Miller last night, and it was very, very good. But anyway, that's done with now. And as I just joked via WhatsApp to my dad, I can now read Doctor Who books until Christmas, which is vaguely the plan. But that may have changed because I've just read the whole of a Doctor Who book, and it's this Doctor Who book. And listen, I didn't expect to be doing this tonight, but I've got to tell you about this experience I've just had because it was glorious. So anyway, Lib has a propensity for buying books that are about Greek mythology and witches and things like that. And this is a book of hers that she's bought recently. It's by Nikita Gill. And it's called Hecate, who I think is the Greek goddess of witches. I can't remember. Anyway, I will be reading this now, and the reason I'll be reading this is because very soon after realising that she'd bought this book, and I think she looked in the back pages, we recognised that she'd also written this book, which is a Doctor Who book, which is a very odd coming together of things. Because this is a Doctor Who book that I'd had in my mind to pick up at some point. So obviously I went on and immediately did it. And the reason for that is because Nikita Gill writes books of poetry. So this is, as I'm showing you, Hecate, is a book of poems. Now, I am not generally a fan of books of poems, like novels that are written in poems. It is not an art form that sits very comfortably with me. There are some poems that I adore because I'm pretentious. So I like T.S. Eliot, and Mark Walden is a poet I'm very, very fond of. And occasionally I'll just drop into poetry and get something out of it, but it is not something that naturally sits comfortably with me. So when I find a book of poems, it often doesn't enthrall me. Now, the exception being that a couple of years back on the Booker Prize long list was a book called Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies, which was an absolutely sensational piece of work that was about a woman suffering from cancer who gets diagnosed with cancer, and the poems within the book talk about not only her, but also talk as the cancer. It's a very odd experience, but a beautiful experience, and something that is recommended, but obviously read with caution. But anyway, having realised that Nikita Gill is clearly an author of some note who writes books full of poems, and remembering that there was a book of late, Doctor Who book, that was written in poetry, I decided to pick this up. So this is a book, ostensibly an 11th Doctor book, although the 11th Doctor isn't the major feature. The major feature is the Weeping Angels. The book is called The Angel of Redemption, and it takes as its inspiration not only the mythology of the Weeping Angels, but specifically that moment in an episode we watched only recently, Angels Take Manhattan, where Amy and Rory get zapped back in time, the impact that has on the Doctor. So, I am I read a lot, but I don't read at speed. That's some people do, and I don't. I am not one of those people who can just hammer through books. But this being a book of poetry, I have just plowed through, and I have found it to be a wonderful experience. One of the weirdest Doctor Who books I've ever written, without any fear of being contradicted there. Genuinely, this is a peculiar experience as a Doctor Who fan. But when you think about it, if there's any aspect of Doctor Who that can lend itself that sort of epic poetry style, and of course, epic poetry, I'm sure, Nikita Gill wouldn't spend long talking about the origins of her art if she wasn't talking about Homer and things like that. But if there's any Doctor Who aspect of Doctor Who that can lend itself to that epic style. It's the Weeping Angels. Aesthetically, they lend themselves to that style. The sort of sense of them being an old baddie. The fact they're removed from science fiction, they lean way more into that science fantasy side of things that, you know, I said, I think that's the natural home of Doctor Who, irrespective of what the Daleks may say. So this is just a glorious read. I mean, what can I say? It sketches the story of how the Weeping Angels have an influence on the Doctor quite early on in the Doctor's life. We talk about the origins of the Weeping Angels, which takes on epic proportions. And then we get down to the nitty-gritty of what happens in New York, and then subsequently what then goes on to happen in London. And that's how the story wraps itself up. And it is a thing of absolute beauty. I'm not messing. I'm genuinely not messing. I did not feel this would be something that I would find quite as moving as I have. I'm desperately trying to find any of the poems that have just resonated with me, because this is the thing. Oh, my little warning's come on here. This is the thing. With a book of poetry, I don't know how to read a book of poetry. Do I spend ages on one poem at a time? Do I read it at pace? But then you have to recognise I've bought this, my book now, I can do what the chuff I want with it. So I read it fast, and it was a glorious thing. Let me just find one of the things, like this, a question for prosperity. What makes a monster? Hiding in the dark. A fear of salvation, or the echo of seclusion? Now, look, you know, I'm not a big poetry fan, but that has a resonance with me. It's just, anyway, there we go. So, what can I say? The weirdest Doctor Who book I think I've read, it's perfectly in keeping with the Matt Smith era, not just because of the Weeping Angels connection, but because it is an era that pushes at the boundaries. We keep talking about this. I'm so delighted to have stumbled. I'm definitely going to read this now. I'm definitely going to read this. And I'm going to read it in exactly the same way I've read this. I'm just going to sit myself down and go bang and see what happens. Because the structure of the poems adds a resonance to it that you wouldn't otherwise have. There are moments where the line breaks actually made me gasp, because I didn't see the sentence going that particular way. And for a Doctor Who book to have had that sort of artistic impact on me is an absolutely joyous thing. You can never tell where... I mean, I'm not saying big revelatory moments. I know poetry can have an impact. I know that now and again you sit down and read something that knocks you in a way that you didn't quite expect. But... you know, I've just read 11 books straight, 11 or 12 books straight, that are considered the best books written last year. And that has been a joyous experience, and I do that every year because it makes me super happy. But then just to dip into Doctor Who and go, oh, wow, that was awesome. How good is that? Highly recommended, people. Please, go out and get this, right? I don't know if it's still available via Amazon or whatever. Don't do it by Amazon. Go to a proper bookshop. Get it from a bookshop. Don't buy from Amazon. Anyway, there we go. Right, okay. Yes, thank you. Cheerio. Bye-bye.